You walk into a bank with $5,000 in savings. They hand you a free toaster, a low-yield savings account paying 0.5%, and a list of fees that would make a casino blush. Now walk into that same bank with $5 million. Suddenly, you're sitting in a private office with leather chairs, a wealth manager who calls you by your first name, and an interest rate on deposits that is 10 times higher than what you got before. Same bank, same building, completely different universe. Here is the uncomfortable truth. Banks do not treat all customers equally. They treat you exactly in proportion to how much they can extract from you or how much they need you. And if you are sitting at the bottom of that wealth pyramid, the system is designed to bleed you dry while handing the keys to the kingdom to the people at the top. Look, I need to say this clearly. This is not financial advice. I am a guy on the internet tracking corporate mechanics, not your certified financial planner. Do your own math? I'm Tom, and this is the Money Syntax. I'm here to cut through the Wall Street jargon and give you the real talk on your money, even if it hurts your feelings a little bit. If you are someone who has ever wondered why your savings account feels like a leaky bucket while the rich seem to print money, hit subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. The wealth tier trap. Let me paint you a picture of how the banking system actually segments you. The average American household has roughly $6,200 in a checking account and about $8,000 in savings. That is about $14,000 of total liquid cash. Now, what does the bank do with that $14,000? They lend it out at 7% in the form of credit cards, auto loans, and personal loans. They pay you 0.5% on your savings, pocket the 6.5% spread, and then charge you $12 a month if your balance drops below $1,000. They also hit you with overdraft fees, foreign transaction fees, and ATM fees. In 2023 alone, the three largest U.S. banks collected over $4 billion in overdraft and non-sufficient fund fees. That is not banking, that is a toll booth. Meanwhile, walk into the private banking wing with $2 million. You get a dedicated relationship manager who will help you structure your assets to minimize taxes. You get access to institutional share classes of mutual funds that charge 0.2% expense ratios instead of the retail version at 1.2%. You get preferred rates on mortgages. You get free wire transfers. You get fee waivers on everything. The difference between these two experiences is not based on how financially responsible you are. It is based entirely on the size of the balance you bring to the table. And here's the part that stings. Most financial advice tells you to just save more, be patient, and the system will reward you. But the math does not work that way. If you have $14,000 earning 0.5%, you make $70 a year in interest. Meanwhile, inflation is running at 3%, meaning your purchasing power is declining by roughly $420 a year. You are losing money by being responsible. The bank is making money off of your responsibility. And the wealthy person with $2 million, they're earning 4.5% on their cash through a tiered deposit account and money market funds. They are beating inflation and they are paying essentially zero fees. The same system that charges you for breathing gives them a key to the executive washroom. Now, why is that? Because the bank does not need your $14,000. They need the wealthy person's $2 million. Your business is replaceable. Theirs is not. So the entire incentive structure of the bank is built around showering the top tier with perks while extracting every possible cent from the bottom tier. And the worst part? Most people do not even realize they are playing a rigged game. How the fee ladder was built. To understand why banks treat you differently at different wealth levels, you have to go back to 1999. That is when Congress passed the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, which effectively tore down the wall between commercial banking, investment banking, and insurance. Before that, your local bank was mostly a boring utility. They took deposits, made loans, and collected a modest spread. After deregulation, banks became profit-maximizing machines that could do everything from underwriting stocks to selling you annuities. And with that shift came a new philosophy. The customer is not the depositor. The depositor is the raw material. The real customer is the shareholder. So banks started engineering products specifically designed to extract fees from the bottom 90% of depositors. Overdraft protection became overdraft loans at $15 a pop. Free checking came with hidden minimum balance requirements. Savings accounts got monthly maintenance fees. And the anchor product that most people rely on, the basic savings account, was deliberately kept low yield because banks realized they could pay you nothing, lend your money out at high rates, and book the difference as profit. Meanwhile, for high net worth clients, banks created entirely separate divisions with different economics. Private banks operate on a fee-based model where they charge a percentage of assets under management, typically around 1%. That aligns their incentives with the client, at least partially. If your portfolio grows, they make more money. If it shrinks, they make less. But for the retail client, the model is completely the opposite. The bank makes money when you make mistakes. They make money when you overdraft. They make money when you carry a credit card balance. They make money when you pay late fees. They make money when you let your savings account sit idle while inflation eats it alive. The entire retail banking model is built on inertia and ignorance. The wealthy get access to financial planning, tax strategies, and alternative investments. The average saver gets a toaster and a pat on the head, and the data backs this up. According to the Federal Reserve's 2022 survey of consumer finances, the top 10% of households by net worth hold over 70% of all deposit accounts by value. That means the bottom 90% of households hold barely 30% of the deposits, yet they pay the overwhelming majority of banking fees. The system is not broken. It is working exactly as designed. It is a wealth transfer mechanism from the mass market to the affluent, with the bank acting as the toll collector. The hidden extraction mechanics. Here is where the system gets really clever. Banks do not just extract money through obvious fees, they extract through opacity, complexity, and behavioral psychology. Let me give you 3 specific mechanisms. First, there is the interest rate spread game. When you deposit money in a standard savings account, the bank pays you the federal funds rate minus a margin. In 2026, with the federal funds rate at roughly 3.125%, the average savings account is paying around 0.46%. That is a negative real yield after inflation and taxes. But the wealthy client, who puts money into a jumbo money market account or a treasury bill ladder, can get yields that track much closer to the federal funds rate. The difference between 0.46% and 3% on $100,000 over 10 years is roughly $30,000. That is not interest. That is a transfer of purchasing power from the small saver to the bank and ultimately to the large depositor who gets better terms. Second, there is the product maze. Banks intentionally offer dozens of account types, each with different fee structures, minimum balance requirements, and interest rates. They know that most people will pick the default option, which is the one that maximizes revenue for the bank. For example, a standard checking account might require a minimum daily balance of $1,500 to avoid a $12 monthly fee. If your balance drops to $1,499 for one day, you get hit with the fee. That is not a service. That is a trap. And the wealthy? They get a relationship package where all fees are waived automatically because their total assets with the bank exceed a certain threshold. Third, there is the psychological manipulation of overconfidence and convenience. The average person thinks, I am not going to overdraft, or I will keep track of my balance. But behavioral economics shows that humans are terrible at predicting their own future behavior. Banks know this. They offer instant overdraft protection that kicks in automatically, but it costs $35 per transaction. They know you will use it because it is easier than tracking every penny. The wealthy, on the other hand, have credit lines linked to their accounts that charge single-digit interest rather than fixed fees. The result is that the same economic activity, say, spending $10 more than you have in your account, costs the average person $35 and costs the wealthy person maybe 50 cents in interest. That is a 70-to-1 price difference for the exact same mistake. Banks are not in the business of treating customers fairly. They are in the business of pricing discrimination based on the elasticity of your wallet. And if you have a small wallet, your elasticity is low, which means they can squeeze you harder because you cannot afford to go elsewhere. Flipping the wealth script. Now that we have mapped the trap, let us talk about the alternative model. The wealthy do not just accept the bank's default offerings. They structure their finances to minimize extraction and maximize returns. And here's the key insight. Many of the tools the wealthy use are legally available to almost anyone. The question is whether you know they exist and have the discipline to use them. Let me walk you through the core principles of the alternative model. First, the wealthy treat their cash like inventory, not like a storage bin. They do not just dump money into a checking account and forget about it. They allocate their cash across a ladder of instruments designed to capture yield at every duration. Treasury bills, money market funds, high-yield savings accounts at online banks, and short-term bond ETFs. These instruments are accessible to any investor with a brokerage account. The difference is that the wealthy actively manage this allocation while the average person simply accepts whatever rate their local bank offers. Second, the wealthy use fee structures that favor them. They know that fee-based accounts, where you pay a percentage of assets, are generally better for growing wealth than transaction-based accounts, where you pay per mistake. So they consolidate their assets with a single institution to cross the threshold that unlocks fee waivers. For example, many brokerages waive all account fees if your household assets exceed $25,000 or $50,000. That is not a huge number. If you can get your total investable assets above that line, you effectively gain access to the same fee-free experience that a millionaire gets. Third, the wealthy prioritize tax efficiency over gross returns. This is the most underappreciated advantage in personal finance. The difference between a taxable account and a tax-advantaged account over a 30-year period can be hundreds of thousands of dollars, even if the underlying investments are identical. The wealthy maximize their use of retirement accounts, health savings accounts, and municipal bonds to shield their returns from the taxman. The average person, on the other hand, often leaves these tools on the table because they are intimidated by the paperwork or they simply do not know they exist. Now, here is the crucial philosophical shift. The wealthy do not see the banking system as a place to store money. They see it as a platform to leverage capital. They use credit strategically, borrowing against their assets at low rates to invest in higher return opportunities. They treat debt as a tool, not a burden. The average person treats debt as an emergency crutch and pays 18% interest on credit cards as a result. The wealthy pay 3% on a securities-backed line of credit and use the proceeds to buy real estate or build a business. The system is not just rigged in terms of what you earn, it is rigged in terms of what you can borrow and how you can borrow it. Positioning yourself for better treatment. Let us get into the specific structural moves that historically allow individuals to reposition themselves within the banking hierarchy. The first structural step involves consolidating your financial relationships. The banking industry operates on a concept called relationship pricing. The more business you bring to a single institution, the better your terms become. Historically, the strategy of centralizing checking, savings, credit cards, a mortgage, and investment accounts under one roof enables a customer to cross the threshold where fee waivers and preferential rates begin to apply. Many institutions have a tiered system that automatically applies better pricing once total assets cross certain markers, commonly $25,000, $100,000, or $250,000. The second structural move involves shifting from depository products to brokerage-based cash management. Treasury bills, money market funds, and short-term bond ETFs have historically offered significantly higher yields than bank savings accounts, often by 2 to 3 percentage points. The operational framework for this is straightforward. A standard brokerage account can hold these instruments, and many brokerages offer debit cards and check-writing features that make the cash as accessible as a checking account. This approach effectively bypasses the low-rate trap that retail banks set for small savers. The third structural element involves the strategic use of credit. The wealthy do not avoid debt, they optimize its cost. Instruments like securities-backed lines of credit allow borrowers to access cash at rates tied to the secured overnight financing rate, plus a small spread, historically around 2 to 3%. This is dramatically cheaper than credit card debt or even many personal loans. The operational requirement is that the borrower must have a portfolio of liquid assets to serve as collateral. For someone building wealth, the long-term framework involves accumulating enough assets to unlock this lower cost of capital, then using that capital strategically for investments that historically outpace the borrowing cost. Fourth, and perhaps most important structural shift involves tax awareness. Municipal bonds, for example, offer interest that is exempt from federal income tax and sometimes state tax. For someone in a higher tax bracket, the after-tax yield on a municipal bond can actually exceed the yield on a taxable corporate bond of similar risk. Similarly, using tax-advantaged retirement accounts to hold bonds and other interest-generating assets can shield the income from annual taxation, allowing the compounding to work without the drag of yearly tax bills. The core analytical framework is not complicated. The wealthy treat their balance sheet as an integrated machine where deposits, credit, investments, and taxes all interact. The average person treats each element in isolation and picks the worst option for each. The remedy is to start thinking like a chief financial officer of your own household, reviewing your entire financial picture at least quarterly and asking whether each account is optimized for yield, cost, and tax efficiency. Your balance sheet revolution, here is where we land the plane. The banking system is not going to change. It is not designed to be fair. It is designed to maximize shareholder value, and that means extracting as much as possible from the least powerful customers while competing aggressively for the most powerful ones. Your only realistic option is to change how you interact with that system. And the first step is brutally simple. Stop accepting the default savings account, the default checking account, the default credit card. None of these are optimized for your benefit. They are optimized for the bank's benefit. Every quarter, you should sit down and audit your financial relationships. What interest rate am I earning on my cash? What fees did I pay last month? Is there a better option available? The answers will usually embarrass you into action. And look, I know what some of you are thinking. Tom, I do not have enough money to make this worthwhile. That is exactly the mindset that keeps people trapped. The difference between earning 0.5% and 3% on $5,000 is only $125 a year, but that is a free dinner. It is a tank of gas. It is a month of Netflix. More importantly, it is the habit of paying attention. The wealthy did not get wealthy by ignoring small leaks. They got wealthy by plugging every single one. The difference between a good financial life and a struggling one is rarely a single big decision. It is hundreds of small correct decisions compounded over decades, and the banking system counts on you being too lazy or too intimidated to make those small decisions. Do not give them that satisfaction. Now, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me, when was the moment you realized your bank was not on your side? Was it an overdraft fee? A low interest rate? A denied loan request? Share your story so others can learn from your experience. And if you know someone who still thinks their savings account is a safe place to grow wealth, send them this video. They need to wake up. The game is rigged, but only if you play by their rules. Go look at your balance sheet with fresh eyes. Your future self will thank you.
Found this interesting? Subscribe to the channel. Give this video a like, share it out, and drop your questions or ideas in the comments. Until our next adventure.